I have this new theory.
Lay it on
that
me.
There is no such thing as vampires. The whole vampire story was created by people who own cats that were too embarrassed to say that their own pet is always constantly biting them.
That's your theory.
That's my theory, and I'm sticking with it.
So 2 puncture wounds on the neck, common cat thing.
Well, I have two on both forearms. I have 2 very vampire-esque puncture wounds.
Just hasn't made it to the neck yet.
You
Hasn't
know,
figured it out. That's where it always ends, right there. When you bleed out,
exactly. I think he was going for the wrists, but I swear.
Such killer instincts, huh?
Yeah, he makes it hard for me to love him sometimes. Not really. He doesn't. I mean, I forgive him after I throw a pillow at him.
Yeah. You can just make him spend the winter outside chopping wood.
Spend like 15 minutes outside in the rain.
Hmm.
He'd be like, all right, I got it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know you don't think you need me to survive, cat, but
Exactly.
he's like a teenager, though.
Yeah, see, that's why I suggested that you, get some animal for your teenage syndrome.
The entitlement is real. Oh my gosh. So real.
Oh, man, I've got, what is today? Date-wise?
21st.
First, I have 7 more days until I have all teenagers and then a 20-year-old.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous, man.
Mm-hmm. It certainly is.
So how do you balance that and 100% homeschooling and work from home? Like that to me is something that it's not equal across the firms that we work in. I tend to think that firm leadership who has their kids have moved on, they're college bound or living on their own or whatever, and then they're like, man, my life just got easier. How come you're not working harder, Cormac?
So here's the funny thing. I understand, and the plight is very real for so many. I'm just going to say that I'm very lucky that
You married a teacher?
Well, so the girl child, she wakes up every day like clockwork. She gets up, she takes care of the dog, she takes him outside and all that other stuff. She does what I probably should do in my life. Gets up, checks her calendar, makes sure that whether there's homework that has been assigned, that it's been done and turned in, checks to see if the class schedule is still going on, that nothing's been canceled or anything. And then she starts her day and goes on. And then the boys, they aren't bumps on a log, mostly.
Yeah.
They set their alarms. They wake up. The sporty one goes and works out downstairs and then eats breakfast and then gets on to class. And then the college one, does what college students typically do. It's like, my classes are at 9:00, so at 8:55 I can wake up, and once I hit enter, on my device, then I'm good.
Yeah.
And, he does a great job in school. So, whatever's working for him works. And I know that that's not always the case. And Rochelle has been working from class because, they've been doing in-person classes, which is about to end as of Monday. And so she's going to go virtual, but she is going to go into her classroom and do it from there so that she can use all of her peripheries.
Got her own little production studio.
Yeah, exactly. And so that'll be kind of good for her to be able to do that until they tell her otherwise. And then,
Gotcha.
Then when they tell her that she can't go in, then we'll probably figure all of that stuff out. So, and then, for the most part, I'm up early, up late, working all the time. I would welcome going back to work, because the commute there and back would actually prevent me from overworking.
Yeah. It kind of forces you to have a start and an end to the day.
Exactly.
Rather than bleeding through everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just need I need a New Year's resolution that starts like after Thanksgiving that says stop.
January 1st is not magical in that way.
No.
Yeah. Set your boundaries, man.
Yeah. I've always had a problem. You know that. I've
Mm-hmm.
always had a problem with that, which I don't complain about. I mean, honestly, I'm not complaining.
No, but you just see how it affects everything else, right? Because that's not where it ends. It might start there, but it doesn't end there, and it does affect other things. And I think, getting back to where we started with that and talking about how different people have different life circumstances and how easy it is to forget that.
Right.
That there's these unwritten, unknown expectations, but you kind of feel them, and you're like, how did it get like this? I think we need to put all of our cards on the table here and just say, hey, remember, this is how it is. And I think, you see people who are really struggling with balancing work and home life and all the others, managing all their construction projects at home, probably, to get their home shipshape for the impending lockdown. And it's like, I was hoping we would make it through this first one and just I could just skate through it and get back to where all my resources are in the office and not have to really like cement all this stuff in place forever. And now it's like, well, maybe I do.
But, I mean, with this, God, I hate to use the term new normal, but with this new normal,
you can bleep that out.
Exactly. We have these issues of, architects have always had this issue of expectations and boundaries.
Yeah.
I think in a way we're making it worse by always being accessible and always, oh, well, I'm here, I might as well go ahead and respond to that. Or hey, I can take this call right now because.
So I don't have to do it later, because later, the stuff piles up. It does, right? Everything piles up. So you're like, oh, if I knock this out now, it'll make later better. But at the same time, you're also kind of rewriting that set of expectations for other people. Are like, oh, well, if he's available now,
then he should be available at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning as well when I call him.
Exactly.
And it's just like, wait, you shouldn't be calling me at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning because there are some limits and boundaries. I mean, my favorite thing is if my computer stays on and Zoom is up, people are like, hey, since you're on Zoom, I just wanted to run this by you real quick. Like, just because the light is green doesn't mean you can go.
Yeah, I think I've told that story, very similar story on here as well, about Teams was running in the background and I didn't even realize it. Yeah. And it was like, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, keeps going. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I don't want to be having this conversation right now. And then the person on the other end was like, then why do you have Teams on? Right. And he was right. But at the same time, it was like, it wasn't my fault either, right? It's just something that happens, but you fall into these kind of traps of, oh, this will be easy. I'll take care of this real quick, or I'll have this little chat, and then it turns into this thing where there's no end to it, and then it comes back to, well, why do you even have that app running then? Huh? But, answer the question.
But that isn't something that you have to be responsible for. I mean, they need to be just as responsible of like, okay.
Oh wait,
I understand. Yeah, I understand that it is like 5:55 in the afternoon, and maybe Evan is gone for the day, or he should be gone for the day. So maybe I'll save this for tomorrow.
Yeah, that's something that I've gotten in the habit of doing, is just keeping lists of things I need to discuss with various people, and just adding stuff to that list. Because if it's all one list, it's really hard to keep it all organized, right? But if it's, and I use an app for this, but it's one of those things where it's like, I know I'm going to have like a weekly meeting with these people. I know I'm going to have a bi-weekly meeting with these people. And I'll just throw stuff on there as prompts for conversation rather than, crapping it out whenever it hits my brain cells.
Now, I'll say that I've been guilty every once in a while of like sending off a Zoom message to somebody.
Because you're thinking of it then, right?
Because I'm thinking of it. But I am honestly not expecting them to respond until the next day. Now, if they respond, if we're both awake and we're both working, okay, fine. Maybe the conversation will go. But if they respond and they're like, well, maybe we can talk about this tomorrow. I'm like, absolutely. Did not mean to insinuate that we were going to talk about it now. I just wanted to let you know that this is something that I want to talk about with you.
And then you have to preemptively do that. Like if you do that, you're like, oh, I'm just going to send this out now. And I will even put in the message, hey, I'm not expecting any response here. But now it's amazing how much extra cruft is attached to our communication, right? It's like, well, you could take it this way or you could take it this way. And here's what I'm expecting. And here's what I'm not expecting. And it's like, I just wanted to tell you this thing so I didn't forget it. It is messy, man. It's super messy because we are in this always on, always connected world.
And what seems and I got this comment from a friend and coworker earlier in the week, and they're just like, we were going back and forth on a conversation through Zoom chat, and she was asking, some questions, and I may have misread it wrong or assumed that she was asking something a little bit differently.
I like how you misread it wrong.
Well, yeah.
That's a sweet double negative.
Exactly. Well, the thing is, like, she took a screenshot of an area, but she was being very specific about asking one thing. But because I looked at the screenshot, I was just like, well, she's like, we're not doing any work here, right? When she was asking about a specific area within that screenshot, not the area that was encompassing the screenshot. I'm like, no, we're definitely doing work there. This is in our scope, and this is what it is. She says, no, I meant this. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, she goes, God, I miss talking to people and face to face.
Just pointing at a real thing.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just like, this door right here, what are we doing? We are not replacing that door, correct? I'm like, oh, yes, no, we are not replacing that door. But it seems so. I will say that for the communication age, the information, age that we are in, we have a harder time communicating.
It's a complete disaster. It totally is. And we've talked about even now in physical space with masks and people who are hard of hearing and people who are reliant on mouth reading, and the word, it just is not as clear. Like now the physical world's getting messed up too when it comes to communication. And
go ahead.
I was just going to add to it and maybe go down a different direction with the conversation. So I want to hear what you want to say about that. But it was like, think about now how many apps you're juggling for communication. I just added another one yesterday. It's incredible how bifurcated, and that's even the wrong word. It's like, I don't know how many bifurcations there can possibly be, but it's like, I've got Teams, I've got Zoom, I've got Slack, I've got Google Chat, I've got Apple Messages, I've got 8 different email accounts. I don't know, like whatever the things are, people are leaving comments on here and there, and there's so many channels and teams, and oh my gosh, there's just no way. There's no way to do this well.
Right. And so, my wife's a living example of being in person, but wearing a mask and having to communicate thoughts and ideas, inflections, vocal tones and everything else when she's teaching.
Yeah.
And so it becomes really hard. You're already trying to control a bunch of first graders and making sure that they're, sitting down, paying attention and all that other stuff. And a lot of times, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but the teacher face and the teacher voice are so very important.
Yep.
I mean, when they give you that teacher look, oh my God, you better sit down.
Oh no, I've been in that position many times, and it's like, no, you're going to listen to what I'm saying right now. It's really important, right?
Exactly. And when you're hampered by being able to not give that teacher look, you're like, oh, what else do I have? I mean, my wife is not a yeller. She does not like yelling at her students and stuff. She will raise her voice, kind of a firm tone or things like that, but she won't yell. And, she says, unfortunately, sometimes I've had to yell for them to understand, because normally it would be the teacher face, that teacher look they would get, and they don't get that. And it's funny, the same thing is like, as well as I do, I'm a very expressive person. I'm using my hands, I'm using my face. I mean, I don't hide anything. Like if somebody says something and I'm like, I don't really like that. If it is floating in my head is, I don't really like that. Apparently it's also coming across on my face. And so in a way, sometimes a mask helps that, because then it masks at least half of my, but for teachers, but for people who need it, for people who are always talking in front of crowds and stuff, I mean, my gosh, it is a new world for them. And I can guarantee you probably have twice as many communicative apps, emails, channels, and everything else than I do. And I just did a mental Rolodex, and I'm at 11 different platforms for conversation to people.
Yeah.
And I know you're twice as many.
Well, and through written conversation that tone is very hard to get through, right? And so people tend to read things in whatever voice they choose to read them in. And so they're kind of reading the mood of an email, for instance, and they could be reading it 100% the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
That's happened many, many times. But now I also see that kind of coming into the physical space, in that when people speak with a mask and you don't understand them, I've seen people be short with other people because they didn't understand what they said, and they're like, "You're not speaking clearly enough." Like that's basically what's implied, and I think that's a pretty sucky side effect of what we're seeing happening with the masks, right? Absolutely. Because people are seemingly angrier, right? They're shorter, because obviously there's lots of other stresses in their lives creeping in as well, and I ain't got time for this, but I notice it a lot at the grocery store, for instance.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I was going to say the same thing, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you're just standing in line and somebody asks you if you want to, and you're like, "What? You know, do you want to?" And it just goes back 3 or 4 times, and then they just pull their mask down and say it, right?
Yeah.
So that you can actually understand them. But it is real, and I think we could just really benefit from giving people the benefit of the doubt that they are trying their best to communicate. And we do have to come up with new ways of being more enunciative so that people can understand us the first time. And so I do try to go out of my way to do that. And I don't always remember to, but I try to. But it is definitely something where I notice standing in line at the bakery to get something, and somebody will say something and you're like, "What?" And then pretty soon you see it escalate. And it's like, it wasn't supposed to escalate. Like, this is not a thing, right? Yeah.
Right. So I was going to use the same example. I mean, I was just in the grocery store not too long ago and happened to be in the spice, or near the spice aisle. And one of the people who was working there, and they were stocking a shelf, another person came up and they said, "Which aisle is the spices on?" But they said it masked in kind of like their normal speaking tone, which of course is going to be a little hampered. And
you're in a noisy room, like it's a grocery store.
Exactly. It's like sounds bouncing all over the place. And all the person did was turn around and look at them and say, "Excuse me."
And then they read that as attitude.
It wasn't in like a snippy tone. And so the person like yelled, "I said, where are the spices?"
Oh my God.
And you're like
watching this happen, and you're just like, "I need to leave right now."
No, I walked up and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, it's in the next aisle over." And then I made eye contact with the grocery clerk, and it was almost like I looked at him like, "Sorry for that person's attitude." And because they immediately just like huffed off. They didn't even say thank you to me. They just like huffed off. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah. There's something else going on there.
I'm not quite sure I actually pointed to which next aisle it was. So
you got 2 choices, man.
Exactly. And it was just like, oh man, come on. Just like, we're all in this together. And, that's another overuse. As much as like the new norm, we're all in this together is overused, but it is underappreciated.
Yeah.
And it's just like, just chill, man. I mean, of any time, which we understand everybody's stressed out. And I think that's what everybody should like wake up every day before they take that first step out the front door. Think to themselves, we're all in this together. We're all stressed out. What can I do to maybe not contribute to this excessive stress level?
Yeah, it's tough. Definitely tough. I mean, that is definitely the real struggle, I think, of that these are the kinds of things that people are going to be studying in
oh my God, yes.
a decade. How did masks contribute to X, Y, and Z? How did stay at home contribute to X, Y, and Z? How did homeschooling contribute to X, Y, and Z? Not homeschooling like traditional homeschooling, but forced homeschooling. You start to think about the way that the psychological effects, the physical effects, like we've seen the statistics of drinking going way up, people trying to cope, the elections, the stress of that. I mean, there's just, it is a giant heap of stuff.
Because you've got one that just graduated and some that are closing in, pretty closely. And I've got one that will be a few months away. And so, when I'm near or around in a socially distanced manner from some of my son's friends, I'll ask them like, hey, what are you guys planning on studying? And a couple of them are actually talking about psychology, and I'm thinking to myself, I mean, wow, what a rich time to be going into that profession. Because,
oh,
I mean, the psychology of the pandemic is going to be like, wow, you're going to be studying that for a long time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to just briefly mention the happy hour that we had the other night, and something that we almost got to, but I never got to bring it up. And I thought it was really cool how Bob from Life of an Architect brought up the question about, the whole thesis around if it doesn't get built, it doesn't count. Something that I started to think about, and what you just said triggered this thought back into my head, kind of having some foresight into what field to go into and how rich it's going to actually be, good or bad. I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? But thinking about architecture in that sense, and how, because of everybody being remote, people building less facilities, hopefully reusing more facilities, there's this huge shift, like Bob was even saying about UI and UX, architects kind of being interested in user experience and user interface kind of stuff. And I think there's going to be an amazing shift from the physical to the virtual in design space. And because it can psychologically affect people in real ways, right? Like we've seen the movies before where, people are like Avatar, right? They're living vicariously through these digital constructs. And if you've ever been in VR, you know that it's kind of disappointing to come back out of VR because in VR, it can be whatever you want it to be. It can be whatever has been designed either by you or for you. And I think we are just scratching the surface with what's possible inside of there. We've seen like Ready Player One, right, where they've got these treadmills set up, and you're physically participating in something remotely. I think there are tons and tons of, and I don't want to say that's better or worse. I just want to say that it's real, right? And this is a real opportunity, definitely for exploration, but potentially like people could be spending a lot of time in these kinds of things. How could architects get us into better places there? I think that there is tons of opportunity, kind of thinking about how people are going to be spending their time. And I'm like the first person to say I'd rather be outside than sitting at a desk, right? I'd rather be participating in the real world and getting fresh air and being in nature and doing all of those things. I just still think that you can't say that this isn't a real thing, even if you...
Oh, absolutely.
So I think it's really interesting to think about how the thesis of it doesn't count if it doesn't get built is, I think that that's right now. I think that that's the past. I don't think necessarily that that's the future. And I think that might be an interesting topic to talk about sometime. But I just bring all that up because I think we did have some interesting conversation in our happy hour. and there was definitely some cool prompts in there. So you guys, we'll put a link to that in the show notes so you can check it out that we had last week. It was pretty fun to hang out with Andrew and Bob from Life of an Architect.
Totally.